Oh, Shalom Aleichem. So we're up to Daf Yud Gimel, and the Gemara says, Lishni ha Rav Yossi Aglili v'ha Rabbanan. The Gemara is trying to analyze Ravina, who is quoted here on Daf Yud Beis Amid Beis, as trying to reconcile this stira by saying that it's either Bechar in Chutz Laretz, Alib Rav Shimon, or it's a case of Bechar in Eretz Yisrael. In any event, the Gemara wants to know, why didn't he give simply the answer that we can reconcile the two brisos by saying that one brisa holds that Kodshim Kalim is Mammon Bailim, and that represents the sheet of Rav Yossi Aglili, and that applies even Bisman Abayis. And when Rav Nachman said in explaining the Mishnah that he cannot be Mekadesh and Isha with the Bechar Bisman HaMikdash, that reflects the sheet of the Rabbanan, who hold that Kodshim Kalim, if it's Roy Lakrova, that is Mammon Gavah, and therefore he cannot be Mekadesh and Isha. Why didn't Ravina give that answer? We see from the fact that Ravina did not give that answer that he also agrees that Rav Yossi Aglili was talking about Kodshim Kalim as Mammon Bailim only L'gabi Shvuas HaPikadon. That was the pasuk, and that was addressed in the parsha, but not in other dinim like Kedusha Isha. So we cannot therefore say that the brisa that says that Kodshim Kalim is his Mammon Bailim, is only according to Rav Yossi Aglili. The Gemara says that, you know what? Rabbi Yochanan, who interpreted our Mishnah like Rabbi Yossi Aglili and holds that Kodshim Kalim is considered, as long as they're alive, before Shechita as Mammon Bailim, Amalei, and that's a gears that we can omit here, he would give you the following answer: Matnos Kahuna Ka'amrit. You're asking a kasha from Bechar, which is Matnos Kahuna. Shani Matnos Kahuna de Chi Kazachu Mishulchan Gavah Kazachu. It means that when we consider the case of Bechar, that's not a kasha on our premise that during the lifetime of the animal is Mammon Bailim, because in the case of Matnas Kahuna, we say that the Schias Kohanim, even Michayim, is Mishulchan Gavah. And therefore, it's not Mammon Bailim at all. Now, Rabbi Yossi Aglili said his din in Kodshim Kalim, which is not Matnas Kahuna. For example, a Korban Shlamim. So when the behemoth belonged to me, and then I was Magdash it, then I'm not being Zocha Mishul Gavah, it was originally mine. But not so in the case of Matnas Kahuna, it never belonged to the Kohen, and therefore the Kohen is Zocha from Shulchan Gavah. So it means that with regard to a Korban Shlamim, even after he was Magdash it, he still retains ownership on the Kodshim Kalim. And therefore may Tura Deruven v'Hashta Tura Deruven. Until the actual Akrova, it belongs to him. A Bechar, for example, in Chutz Laretz is not Roy Lakrova. And in this case, Rabbi Yossi Aglili would also extend the principle that he applied to Korban Shlamim, namely that's Mammon Bailim. And that we saw already in the answer of Ravina. But in the case of Matnas Kahuna, like for example Bechar, there even Rabbi Yossi Aglili, according to Rabbi Yochanan, would agree that it's not Mammon Bailim because Matnas Kahuna is Mishulchan Gavah Kazach. Gufa. Let's go back to the brisa itself. The brisa says that based on the pasuk in Shvuas HaPikad of Vayikra Hey, which says that Nefesh Kisechto Mal Umal Amal Bashem Kichesh Ba'mito B'Pikadon, L'Rabos, it comes to include Kofar Pikadon of Kodshim Kalim. Shehem, they are considered Mamono, meaning Mammon Bailim, Divrei Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Then the brisa continues, and Ben Azai tries to explain the sheet of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that the pasuk is coming to be Marbe Es HaShlomim. We only have a quote from Rabbi Yossi Aglili regarding Kodshim Kalim. Comes along Ben Azai and he says it's a reference to Shlomim. We don't know exactly what he's coming to exclude because certainly Shlomim is Kodshim Kalim. Abba Yossi ben Dostoi disagrees with Ben Azai, and he says, "V'omer lo omer Ben Azai el b'char bilvad." when Ben Azai was explaining Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, he was only referring specifically and exclusively to Bechar, and that's Moment Bailim, but not Shlomim. We'll see later on, as the Gemara is going to explain. Abba Yossi Ben Dostoi. Omar Mar, we saw in the Brisa Ben Azai Omer, he interprets Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, Lerabos, Umal Amal Bashem, Lerabos Ashlomim, that's Moment Bailim, and it's Kachim Kalim, but it's Dafka Shlomim, Lemute Mai. Are there other kinds of karbonos that fit onto the category of Kachim Kalim, and we don't apply the principle of Moment Bailim? Eating lame, if you're going to say, based on the sugi that we learned today, Lemute Bechar. And here Rashi adds that we're talking about a Bechar in Chutzlaritz. A Bechar in Eretz Yisrael, at the time the Beis HaMikdash stood, is Omei Lo Krova, and if it's Roy La Krova, then Mishulchan Gavah Kazach. Then the Kodim Azoch Mishulchan Gavah, there's no Moment Bailim, as Ravina said back on Daf Yud Beis Amid Beis. But if we're in Chutzlaritz and then there's no Roy La Krova, then it's not Moment of Gavah, of Shulchan Gavah Kazach. But nevertheless, Ben Azai says that in the case of Bechar, even in Chutzlaritz, it's not Moment Bailim. So Gemara says that's impossible. There's a Kal V'chomer that will completely reject that. Because Hashta, if in Mash Lomin, which then the laws of Kodshim, of Karbonos, are that much more Chomor than the law of Bechar. For example, Shlom is ton smicha, right? The Bailam before the Shlita have to lean on the animal and recite Vidu. V'nesachim, and we bring Yayin l'nesachim al gavi mizbeach, and that's called Minchas Nesachim that are muktarim on the mizbeach. Utnufas chaza v'shol, and we have to do a tnufa on the matnas kahuna of this carbon, which is chaza v'shol. And nevertheless, Amrit Mamona Bailim, who, according to Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, it's Moment Bailim, despite the fact that it has all the chumras and all the trappings and all the nuesha of karbonos, is Bechar, mi boy, Bechar that don't have any of these dinim. You have to tell me that it's Moment Bailim? For sure it's Moment Bailim. If Shlomim is Moment Bailim, then certainly Bechar is Moment Bailim. And it's not possible, therefore the Ben Azai was saying that in the case of Bechar, it's not Moment Bailim according to Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. El Amar Rabbi Yochanan. What did Ben Azai have in mind? Lema'ute Maser. We're talking about Maser Behema. And that's also called Kodshim Kalim, and nevertheless it's not Moment Bailim. Kiddusanya, we learned to the Brisa. Bibchar. We're talking about a Bechar Tam, meaning it's not a Balmum. Nemar. The Torah says about Midbar Yudches, Ach Bechar Shar, O Bechar Keset, O Bechar Eis, Lo Sifte Kodesh Heim. And the pasuk means to say that you can't be Podeh, be Motzi the Bechar L'chulah, in such a way that you sell it, for its value in meat in the marketplace. It's not Basar Chulah. However, although it says Lo Sifte in the pasuk, the Gemara's Medayik, it doesn't say Lo Yimkar. And therefore, v'nimkar tam chai, that as long as it's not about, that even when it's not about mum, and it's alive, then you could sell it. And the buyer will have to bring the carbon into the Beis HaMikdash. Or wait till you're actually stive in the Yipabal mum. If it was shechted b'chutz l'mikdash, then it's also by no midin kodshim shenichshetu b'chutz. And if the Bechar is a Balmum, then you're allowed to sell it, whether it's Chai or it's already Shachut. However, Meiser, there it says Lo Yigael in the Pasuk in Vayikra Chav Zayin. And we're going to dash in the Gzeira Shava here from Chermei Kohanim, where it also says in Vayikra Chav Zayin Lo Yimacher V'Lo Yigael. And just like there's an Isa Mechira in the case of Chermei Kodim, so too in Maisa Behema, there's an Isa Mechira. And therefore, Ve'eno Nimka Lo Chayv Lo Shochel Lo Tam Lo Balmum. And this is what Ben Azai meant when he said that since that Bechar is not considered what? Is not considered Moment Bailim. And why not? Because the Torah says you're not allowed to sell a bechor ma'aser behema. So ma'aser behema. So if you can't sell ma'aser behema, then it means it's not violent. Otherwise, you should be able to sell it. Ravina, on the other hand, Masli Leas Seifa, he brings this explanation of the Brisa on the Seifa of the Brisa. What does it say in the Seifa of the Brisa? If you recall, it says, Abba Yossi ben Dostoy Omer lo Omar ben Azai. When Ben Azai interpreted Rabbi Yossi Aglili, El b'Bechar Bilvat. And that's moment violent. For what does that mean? Lemute Mai. Ilem Lemute Shlomim. That doesn't make any sense. We have a Kal V'chomer Ma Bechor Hu Kodesh Mirechem. And nevertheless, it's moment who. So you never really had a full-fledged ownership when it was born as a Bechor. But Shlomim, which was born as your animal, and now you magdish it, me boy, it goes without saying it's a dover pashut that's moment violent. So it's impossible to say that Abba Yossi ben Dostoy is coming to say that Shlomim is not moment violent. Omar Rabbi Yochanan, you know what Abba Yossi ben Dostoy had in mind? L'me'utei maaser behema. That's not considered moment violent, and that's going to be based on the fact that it's an Isa Mechira. Keresanya b'chor, b'chor nema lo sifte. V'nimkar tam chai. From the fact that Torah didn't say lo timocher, it means you're allowed to sell it as long as it's tam and chai. Balmum chai v'shachim. In the case of a balmum, if the b'chor is balmum, then you could even sell it after shchita. Chai goes without saying, but even after shchita. But in Meiser, it says what? Nemar lo yigoyel. And we're going to derive from that Gezerah Shov that we mentioned before to Chermei Konim that what? That it's also b'mechira. V'yeinu nimkar lo chai lo shoch lo tam lo balmum. And since a Meiser behemo is chomur, and you cannot sell it, therefore it's logical to assume that even according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, it's moment gavoa, it's not moment violent. So Gemara now raises an objection to Ravina. You're telling me that according to Rabbi Yossi, when Ben Azai interpreted Rabbi Yossi Aglili b'Bechar Bilvad Omar, that he was saying that Bechar is considered a moment violent, it sounds like he's coming to exclude all of Kodshim Kalan. Otherwise, he would have said Lamute Meiser Behema. Kasha. At this point, the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah on Daf Tesam and Beis, and it says in the Mishnah that Chayovim al Hezek Nechosim She'ein B'hem Me'ila. You're only chayav if you're mazik Chulin She'ein B'hem Me'ila. The Gemara on Daf Yud Beis and Beis established that the Mishnah intends to exclude nechasim that don't have me'ilah, but they're kodshim. So we're going to have a case of kodshim that don't have me'ilah, and that's why Rabbi Yochanan said the Mishnah reflects the sheet of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that kodshim kalam is moment bailim, and now the Gemara brings Rava, who learns that you can interpret the Mishnah even according to Chachamim, who disagree with Rabbi Yosef. Rava Amar, my nechasim she'en b'hem me'ilah, nechasim she'en b'hem din me'ilah. There's no kedushas kodesh l'shamayim. U'may ninu, and what does this refer to? It refers to nechasim de hedjot. Nechasim that are privately owned by a hedjot have no kedusha. So Gemara asks for listening to hedjot. Why does the Mishnah say nechasim she'en b'hem me'ilah? Why not just simply cut it down and get right to the point and say nechasim de hedjot? Kasha. The Gemara says that the answer of Rava remains difficult. Rabbi Abba, Shlomim Shiziku. Oh, this is a complicated sugya. Okay, we have now a case of a shor tam, and he was magdish the shor as a korban shlomim, and then the shor was mazik. Now we have halacha in shor tam that you go migufo v'lo min aliyah, which means that the maximum amount of money that you can demand as compensation, Mr. Mazik, is only up to the value of the goof. And from the value of the goof, we split it in half because in a short time you only pay chatzi nezek. Now, this shar, shehukdash lekorban shlama, has two parts to it. It's got basar and it's got a murim. The basar is eaten and can be sold on the market as a value, but the emurim are burnt on the mizbeach. So now the question is, when the Torah says that a shartam is only subject or lends itself to a gevia migufo, what is the maximum amount of money that you can collect? Is it the value of the basar and only the basar, or even the value of a murim? So it's almost as if this shor has like a shutfis in it of both basar and a murim, two parts of the animal's body. And the Gemara says, Pshita, a murim legava salki. Why would Rabbi Abba have to tell me this chiddush that you can only be gove chatzi nezek bibesaram from the basar of the carbon after hakrova, and not from the emurim pshita? After all, the emurim are burnt on the mizbeach. How can he possibly dream of collecting from the emurim? Lo tzricha legove bibsaram keneged emurim. What Rabbi Abba wants to teach us, well, let's just explain the Havamid and then we'll say the Maskon of Rabbi Abba, is that if the emurim are worth X and the basar is worth Y, then when we calculate the gevia migufo shel mazik, we should calculate both X plus Y. So Enoch Hinami, if it'll be gove from the basar, but you have to include in the basar the value of the emurim. Because even though the emurim are burnt on the mizbeach, nevertheless they participated as a shutaf in the Maaseh Hezek. And this will all depend upon a sugya, which is really that back on forward on Daf Nun Gimel, which the Gemara is going to give us a little taste of here on Daf Yud Gimel. So again, what we're talking about just in abstract terms is two shutfim in the Maaseh Hezek, one of which is collectible and the other is not collectible. So you got the shar tam that he was magdish as a carbon shlum that was mazik, and you've got the basar and you've got the emurim. You can't collect from the emurim, but can you jack up the value of collection from the basar, figuring in to the calculation the value of the emurim, because the emurim was part of the goof of the behemoth that was mazik. And the Gemara thinks that this should depend upon a machlokas between Rabbi Nosson and the Chachamim in the case of a shar in a bar. What do I mean by shar in a bar? The shar that was owned by so-and-so pushed somebody else's shar into a bar. So the final hezek was achieved by the bar, the impact of the bar, but the impetus was the shar. So according to Rabbi Nosson, if the shar that pushed Yenem shar into the bar was a shar muad, then the Baal Shar will pay Chatzi Nezek, the Baal Bar will pay Chatzi Nezek because they're shutfim in the Hezek. If the shar that pushed the other shar was a shar tam, then the Baal Shar pays Reva Nezek. And I'm going to fool you and tell you that the Baal Bar pays Chatzi Nezek. Not true. According to Rabbi Nosson, the Baal Bar now fills in for the Baal Shar, and he pays Shloshes Revei Nezek. And why is that? Because the only reason the bar doesn't pay that amount is because there's a shar. If the shar doesn't calculate into the picture because a shar tam can only pay Chatzi Nezek, then let the bar pay the balance of the Hezek. And the Chacham say, no, the Baal Bar is potter. It's only the shar adochev that's chayiv. And the shar hadochev will pay either Chatzi Nezek if it's a Tam or Nezek Shalom if it's a Mu'ah. So the Gemara says, I'll leave it in mind. When we go back to the statement of Rabbi Abba about a Murim and Basar, are we linking Rabbi Abba with one of these two shitas in the Machlok between Rabbi Nosson and Chachamim? Because Rabbi Abba says the Nizak could not collect from the Basar Shlamim the Chelek of the Emurim. It would make sense l'chora to say that Rabbi Abba is reflecting the sheet of the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan say that if the Bala Bar is Potter, then the Bala Shor will pay Kedino, whether it's Chatzi, Nezek, or Nezek Shalom. He doesn't pick up the tab of the Bala Bar. So Gemara says, Pshita. I don't need Rabbi Abba to teach me this. It's Ha'amri lekelish talume ki lekelish tu v'hai lo mishtalmi v'hai. The Shitas Chacham is that if you can't collect from so-and-so, you don't penalize the other mazik, that he should pick up the chiyuv of that person that's lo mishtalin. And Memela here also, if you can't collect for the Emurim, that's not enough of a reason to be gova from the basar more than the chelik of the basar and replace the Emurim by upgrading the amount of money that he has to pay. On the contrary, it's pashut that according to Rabbi Nosson, the din would be just the opposite of what Rabbi Abba said, which would mean that since you can't collect from the Emurim, then you're going to collect from the basar more than the chelek that he would normally pay the nezek by filling in and paying that chelek of the Emurim. And that's called ki leked ashtum mihai ishtalu mihai. So what exactly was Rabbi Abba talking about? And the Gemara answers, Iba is according to one answer, ki Rabbi Nosson. Rabbi Abba holds like Rabbi Nosson, and the din is ki lekelesh tume mihai lo mishtal mihai. Iba is ki Rabbanon. Or we could go in another direction and we could link up Rabbi Abba with Rabbanon and lo amrinon ki lekelesh tume mihai mishtal mihai. Now, we said that if Rabbi Abba is going to Rabbanan, that it's a milsud of pshita, that he cannot collect from the boss or keneged the Emurim. And immediately I would have thought that this principle that the Chacham established, that the mazik does not have to replace the chiyuv of the other mazik who doesn't pay, I would have said that's only in trei gufe, when you have a shor and a bar. But if two mazikim are b'chad gufa, so we have like a shiluv, we have an integration and a partnership between the bas and the mimurim of one single shar that was mazik. Maybe the din would be that matzi amale, the nisa could say to the owner of behema shlamim, mikol heichad be'inin mishtalamna. Whatever part of the animal I want to collect from, I will connect from. I could collect from the basar, and that would be machzis hanezek, and that's certainly coming to me. And if machzis hanezek would require and imply that he has to collect from the emurim, let it be so. So therefore, Rabbi Abba has to be mechadish that even if there are two mazikim in one guf, nevertheless the nizak has no recourse to claim that he wants to collect even Yosef Midei Chelik HaBasar and collect for the Emurim. Iba is saying Rabbi Nosson, and even though Rabbi Nosson holds that Kileka Lishtalume Hai Ishtalume Mishtalume Hai Hasam, who only over there in the case of a Shar Shadachas Es Chaver Lebar or a Shar Chaver Lebar. Omer Zos Rabbi Nosson. Why? Why does Rabbi Nosson hold that the bar will now pick up the tab for the shar? The Omer Le, who's talking now? Balashar. It means that the shar, the mazik, was mazik the shar of another person, and the balashar of the nizak says to the Balabar, "Anot torai b'berach ashkate." I found my shor dead in your bar. In other words, the final blow that caused the death of my shor was your bar. So befall, your bar killed my shor. And therefore, I have a right to collect from you the entire compensation. Meaning, the only reason why the Balabar gets away with paying half is because there's an option to demand payment from the Balashar. But if the Balashar is out of the picture, then now we go back to square one, and the Balabar should pay for the entire damage. But here, in the case of Behemoth Shlamim, when we have both what? Basar and Emurim, Nimatzis Omar. Can the Nizak say, Basar Azik, Emurim Lo Azik? The animal is made up of two parts, of Basar and Emurim. The entire animal is Mazik. So therefore, there was a Hezek Echad of the Shutfis of both the Basar and the Emurim. So there's no svar to say, well, collect from the chelik of basar more than chatzi nezek, because the amurim, even though you can't collect from them, but they were equally responsible for the hezek. It's not like the case of bar, where the bar was the final blow to kill the shar that was pushed into the bar.